Hello and welcome to today's video. This is actually my last full day here in Bolivia, and I think it is time to talk about my impressions of this country and about a few little cultural shocks that I had here in the country. I am still in La Paz, which is the highest capital on earth, and that is also one thing that I want to mention at this point, because honestly the height here, the altitude, hit me way harder than I had expected. Bolivia in general is a country that has a lot of places that are really high, so make sure to be prepared. You probably already hear it. I am a little bit out of breath just by walking through the streets. So that was definitely the first surprise that I had here. But also the altitude, obviously we are in the mountains, and that causes the most epic views ever. This country is super impressive, honestly. The views are insane. The nature here is different from everything that I've ever seen and experienced. So it is a very, very beautiful country. And then there's one thing that I want to talk about, which are the people here of Bolivia. I've made a video about it. There are a lot of traditions here in the country. Bolivia has a huge percentage of indigenous people, meaning that very old traditions are still alive until today. And that makes it a very, very interesting country to visit. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to visit this country, and it definitely was one of the best parts here of my visit here in Bolivia, to get to know a little bit the culture, the traditions, the people here. Now, another thing about the people is that they are extremely kind. Actually, I was surprised by that, to be honest, because at first glance they seem quite closed. They seem a little bit serious, I would say. But once you start talking to them, they open up easily and they smile and they are super kind and friendly. That was definitely a huge surprise, but a really beautiful surprise. But I did have one problem here, because somehow I did have a little communication problem at some times. That's for sure also my Spanish, because my Spanish is not perfect, that's for sure. But it was kind of funny, because sometimes I was asking a question and I did get an answer about the same topic, but it wasn't the answer to my question. So it was sometimes a little bit funny and a little bit strange. It does happen to me in every country, basically, that in Spanish sometimes people don't understand 100% what I mean, because my Spanish really isn't perfect. But here it was like a little bit more extreme than it usually is. So it was definitely something that caught my attention, and that was kind of funny actually. And also, of course, I did have to get used to the accent. It is an accent that I didn't hear before, so there was also a problem from my side at the beginning. But by now I feel like it's getting way better. Now, of course, there are a few huge differences to what I am usually used to. A few little cultural shocks that I have been living here. For example, there was one thing that extremely caught my attention, and that are all of these cables. I'm not sure if you can actually see that here in the picture. Actually, that is quite normal in a lot of countries. For example, I've seen that a lot in Asian countries, but also in different Latin American countries, that there are a lot of cables outside in the streets. And also, of course, there are countries or parts in Europe where you can see that, but I would say it is extreme here in Bolivia. I've seen such a chaos of cables here. I've never seen it that extremely before, and it really caught my attention. Sometimes they are even hanging super low, so yeah, that was kind of funny to see. And another thing that extremely caught my attention here is the traffic. It is absolutely crazy. This is the craziest place I've ever been to when it comes to traffic, honestly, because actually there are so many cars, like the traffic is crazy, but also I feel like the air here is extremely polluted. I've been to countries where it was extreme before. I've been to many countries in Asia, in Latin America, and well, I've noticed that a lot before, but I feel like here it is somehow extreme. I don't know. I can feel it sometimes when I'm walking through the street. It just cuts off my breath, because there is like a car passing that has a lot of bad pollution or whatever, and I don't know, here I feel it way stronger than in other countries, but also I'm not sure if maybe that is because of the altitude. I think this could also have an impact because in general I feel like I'm not being able to breathe here so well, so maybe that also has an impact. I'm not sure if it is just my sensation or if actually the traffic here really is worse. They do honk a lot, there's a lot of traffic jams. It is really interesting here, and it's also interesting when you are crossing the street. It feels like you are risking your life, kind of. I feel like there are no rules. It is always like whoever comes first tries first, and when there's like a traffic jam they try to squeeze in somehow. It's absolutely crazy. And also the public transportation here is something that seems really interesting because in general here in La Paz the transportation is quite well. I've shown you a video where they have the cable cars, which I think is really cool. That was the coolest public transportation that I have ever used, that's for sure. But also they have minibuses here in the city, and they have a lot of minibuses. I have no idea how local people know where and when to take a bus, or if there's a system behind it. I'm not sure, to be honest. I didn't see any information on Google Maps, for example. That is how I usually move around, but here it didn't work. So I had to ask people, I had to read things on the internet to figure out which bus to take. It did work out, but you kind of have to know where it stops and so on. And then also they don't have the stop button. No, you have to scream that you want to stop actually and get off at the bus, which is also quite normal in Latin American countries. But well, it is something that always calls my attention, so it is definitely worth a mention, I think. And the next point are the supermarkets here. I feel like it is always a little bit difficult once you get to another country to find like your stuff that you normally eat, right? But here, I don't know, I just don't understand the supermarkets here, because if you find a supermarket, or at least the ones I found, maybe I did a mistake here, but the ones I found, they were tiny and they had just a small variety of products. So that was a little bit strange. And I feel like a lot of people here buy on the streets because there are huge markets on the streets. For example, if you want to buy fruits or something like that, vegetables, meat as well, you can find these things on markets on the streets. And then also one thing that surprised me a lot was bread. Actually, when you want to find a bakery, those are also quite often on the streets. There are some bakeries in stores, but I found quite a few ones on the street, which I've never seen before. So that was quite interesting. One other thing that actually kind of scares me are those puppets that you can see here in the stores, in front of clothing stores, for example. I don't know what is going on with those, but they do look like from a horror movie. Somehow they look super scary in my opinion. And yeah, I don't know what is the reason behind that. And now there's only one last thing that I want to mention, and those are the street dogs. Because actually I've never seen street dogs like that before. For some reason, the street dogs here seem to do quite well actually, which is nice. So far, every time in every country where I've seen street dogs, those looked a little bit sick or super skinny. But here in Bolivia, the street dogs are actually rather fat, I would say. Some of them at least. I mean, they look quite healthy, I would say, and really, really fat sometimes. It is super strange and a bit funny, but I'm actually happy to see street dogs like that. And now this was it from my side. These are my impressions of Bolivia. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And maybe you've also been to Bolivia. Maybe there were a few things that have surprised you as well. I'm curious, so leave me a comment below. And also, I'm going to move on to the next country now. So make sure to subscribe to my channel to not miss out on any further adventure. And I will hopefully see you in the next video.